Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Saturday. It is the weekend, August 12th, 2023, about 11:23 a.m. here, California time. And latest quake here on the map shows some movement there into the Hawaii area. Also a 3.1 just south here of the Philippines, around the Indonesia Islands area. All right, starting off here with the Hawaii Islands. Lighten up here in the last hour. A couple smaller quakes there in the 2 range, kicking up very shallow around the crater area here of this volcano, which still remains at a yellow status, meaning that it is not in the eruptive stage. I was checking out the seismograph stations here just a minute ago, and we'll pull some of these up. Here's the latest seismograph stations there locally to the area, showing some of that earthquake activity over the last 12 hours. Nothing major going on. A glance here, we'll check out the webcams just to see the perspective out there. Now, this is obviously a long ways away from the Maui fires further west, so nothing's going to be shown on here. But we're just looking for some maybe some volcanic activity. I'm really not seeing anything across the northeast rift zone there, and there's a couple other cameras keyed up here, I believe, as well. A couple of these look like they're offline, but this is looking towards the northeast as well. So things are, again, kind of quiet there across the volcano, but we'll continue to watch that, see if things pick up or not. Earthquake activity, obviously a good indicator of potentially some movement going on below the surface. But the latest update here that was put up a couple days ago here from the USGS, that's the Hazard Notification System for volcanoes, shows that Kilauea Volcano is not erupting and no significant changes have been observed at the summit or in either rift zone. But we'll continue to watch that. Earthquake activity generally light elsewhere, and there's that one earthquake from yesterday near the Loihi Seamount, 3.4. All right, so looking out across the globe here, or at least the flat scale model Earth, what do we have? Well, let's check out the largest earthquake activity here in the last 24 hours. That's actually somewhat minimal, 5.1 out here across the Indonesia area, 49 kilometers deep. Now, again, that's the area that's seen a little bit of swarming kicking off here today. We are noticing some further movement in our quiet zones that we were watching yesterday. That would include areas around the Tonga area and also Papua New Guinea. Remember, this area was absolutely quiet here yesterday. Things are filling in slightly around this area. I would still expect some movement around the Solomon Islands area, eastward down into the Vanuatu region. This area has been pretty quiet here over the past few days, so keep an eye on this area with this bouncing back and forth. We're kind of squeezing this area a little bit between the deeper movement quakes here to the east and the shallower earthquake activity to the west here with that 4.9 just a couple hours ago here in the Papua New Guinea area. So keep an eye. X marks the spot here today for Solomon Islands. Some movement up around the Mariana Trench as well. This earthquake just after midnight. Well, kind of well north here, but into the subduction zone. Can't remember the name of this. The Izu Trench sits up here a little bit, but in between the two, 4.4 near Volcano Islands, but this one's pretty deep, 189 kilometers deep below this area into the subduction zone. All right, see what else we got here. Turkey's seen a little bit of movement this morning as well with a 4.7 about 6 o'clock or so earlier today. A little aftershock movement going on there. There's a little bit more activity stirring up there in the region on the Earthquake 3D globe. Looks like some 2s and 3s and a little activity around the Mediterranean today. But for the most part, as we go westward, pretty quiet. Not a whole lot of movement going on across the Atlantic Ocean. South America, pretty good cluster of activity here today, it looks like. Mostly 2s and 3s. Looks like some movement north here into the Peru area. I'm not seeing it on the USGS map, though. We got one earthquake on their map from early this morning, it looks like, a 4.3, 101 kilometers deep. But for the most part, I'd say there's definitely some uptick going on here across the Peru-Chile Trench. We'll watch that today. And the Middle America Trench, pretty good hot spot of activity off the coast of Mexico with a cluster of 3s Puerto Rico area. Let's go ahead and check them out here on the USGS side. Looks like a little bit of activity stirring up, including a 3.1 in the last hour. Aside from that, handful of smaller quakes overnight, 3.7, a little bit further up north around the Puerto Rico Trench. As far as the states go, let's see what we got. Not a whole lot going on through the eastern portion of the country. I know these are from yesterday. There's a 2.3 up in Canada late last night, and some movement here across the Oklahoma area and Texas from yesterday. Not a whole lot going on up there through Yellowstone, but I did see a little signature on the seismograph station here. That's at Lake Yellowstone. Notice that. That definitely is earthquake activity showing up there on that seismograph station. So let's see what we have here at the Yellowstone thumbnails. It's a pretty cool little overview here from this site. It's called isthisthingOn.org. I got to go to the /Yellowstone and be able to see the outline here of the caldera, along with any earthquake activity that's taken place here. Now, Lake Butte is going to be this station right here. Looks like some earthquake activity there on the map. That's the Lake Yellowstone area. And as you can see, that movement did show up here across the Lake Yellowstone seismograph station. It's basically the same thing that I'm running live here, and the recorded areas right here across the map. But aside from that, generally light earthquake activity overnight there at Yellowstone. Handful of smaller quakes. These are very small. And the USGS probably will not even get to these until Monday. If they do, we'll find out how big the magnitudes are, but they're not that big at all. Probably below the 1.5 threshold. All right, Southern California. Anything major going on here? Doesn't look like it again. This activity here from last night up and down the area of the Imperial Fault. Let's see, we've seen a couple of smaller quakes here south of Mexicali early this morning. It looks like 2.5, and another one, 2.0, up north here into the California side near Holtville. That's on the Imperial Fault as well. Remember, this kind of extends up to the San Andreas Fault, so we'll watch that. I don't know if we're going to see any swarming or not in this area. The seismograph station within the Southern California area looks pretty quiet for now. That's going to be the Barrett station right here. Not a whole lot of seismic activity coming in to that area. A little bit there in the Indonesia area right now, but that's almost always active. Here's some small quake activity over here. Looks like one from last night and a couple early this morning, just around the 101 there in the Southern California area. Beautiful coastal drive. Been down there a handful of times, north of Ventura. Oakview area. These earthquakes relatively shallow and around the Red Mountain Fault, or the Red Mountain Fault zone. It's a little lengthy coast fault system here that runs off into the Pacific. Kind of watch that. The rest of California here, not a whole lot. Fairly minimal conditions. There is some activity across the Clear Lake volcanic field. That's obviously got to do with the Calpine hydrothermal operations that's ongoing there in the region. All right. Pacific Northwest, not a whole lot going on. Of course, yesterday the tremor map was non-existent, showed 0 epicenters of tremor across the Cascadia subduction zone. The Alaska area, pretty minimal. Nothing showing up here in the last hour, and very minimal small microquake activity in the last 24. New Zealand area, I don't think we got any movement going on down there since yesterday, or well, it's been a couple days now since we've seen that 5-pointer. Let's run over there real quick and just double check the GeoNet servers, and then we'll take a look at the activity today across the region as far as weather goes. 2 days ago, 5.6, still holding steady at a 5.6. As far as the all magnitudes, this includes the unnoticeable earthquakes, which there's, a couple of them, some smaller quakes. USGS, the USGS and the EMSC not reporting that. I believe the EMSC data is set at 2.5 and above for the world last 50 or last 100. USGS M1.0 and above. That's going to be for the states and U.S. territories. So could include GeoNet servers back here on the globe. Last time I did that, though, they were throwing out some oddball earthquakes, similar to what EMSC was doing here a couple days ago. How they were saying there was some big earthquake activity here across the strait near Morocco and Spain within this area. But we'll maybe consider adding the GeoNet servers back on the globe. It's always good to monitor earthquake activity there in New Zealand. But as you see for now, things are kind of calm here over the last 2 days following that 5-pointer in the region of New Zealand. Checking out the earthquake drums here, a little bit more quieter. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of significant seismic signatures here on the map, and some of these may even be some type of interference or very small, this is very small earthquake activity locally to the Oxford station there in the South Island. All right, space weather activity, we are dipping low, folks, dipping very low into the B flare category. Been a little while since I've seen that go that far down, declining in the sunspot number. Well, we do have a few sunspots, but let's just say they're not active whatsoever. And look what happened to this one overnight. It's just pretty much depleted its cycle. It was looking fairly complex yesterday with a whole bunch of different cores in that structure, or structures within this core. And today, well, it pretty much dissipated. Watching this region down here, pretty massive sunspot region, but not a whole lot of complexity in it. So with this in mind here, let's check out the far side areas, eastern limb of the sun. I don't really see any bright areas way out here. Obviously, we would see some bright regions, some active regions, well before we would see the actual sunspot itself on the magnetogram image. It doesn't look like anything's around the eastern limb of the sun. Obviously, the rest of the sun is, but as far as sunspot activity goes, there's not a whole lot going on over there. So we are entering into what looks like a very quiet period of solar flare activity. We're still way above in terms of the number of sunspots for the solar cycle 25, which will peak in 2025, about June or so, June or July. And then we'll start going back down into solar minimum there for the next cycle. But we're still way above on the solar sunspot number progression. This is the forecasted or predicted, and here is the actual number. So we're well above in terms of the numbers and also the SFI, which is the solar flux progression energy. Way above on that. But it's probably going to take a dip here pretty soon. No major roars forecasted here. Things look pretty minimal far as that goes, unfortunately. All right, weather outlook here today. We've got an enhanced risk for some severe weather way up northeast. Looks like mainly around areas extending from Ohio over here to the east around the Pennsylvania area. New York area, it looks like. Getting in on some of that activity. New Jersey. So heads up for tornado potential here this afternoon. There is some big time wind event possibility as well in the 30% zone. Same areas. A little bit less out here across the southern plains. Hail threat looks to be potential up there as well. Things are just coming together to make for a little bit messy of a weekend here across areas of the Northeast. So if you're out there, Cleveland, Ohio, over towards the Syracuse, New York area, keep your eyes on the sky, or at least be looking out the window. Keep your weather radio on because severe weather is in your forecast here today. Tomorrow, not so much, a little bit less active. And thunderstorm outlook here today, afternoon, early evening, overnight. Doesn't look like the meteor shower is going to be a potential out there across the plains again. And us over here in California, I'm noticing this thunderstorm activity stretching out into my area. Covers Redding, Chico, Sacramento, Fresno area. they have us in a slight chance for some thunderstorm activity this evening. So I'm thinking I should have got out there last night to see the Perseid meteor shower, but I'll take another glance here tonight. Hopefully these clouds hold off and the storms do. But hey, you know what? To be honest, I'd probably prefer some thunderstorm activity over the meteor shower. Let's take a look here and see what we got for the current satellite image here across the west coast. Now a lot of this moisture is coming up here from the south. Kick this into motion. Monsoonal moisture working its way up. Let's see here. I think that activity that we're going to see later today is stirring off of this little low that's trying to form here. Should pull some of that moisture over and westward into the Sacramento Valley area later today. Have to see how that plays out. But aside from that, let's see what we got here for rainfall accumulation. Probably not a lot here in Sacramento Valley area. Most of that's going to be in the Sierra Nevada. Next 10 days of moisture. This kind of gives us a good indicator of where some precipitation and thunderstorms will be building up out here. High and dry out here in Northern California. Not a whole lot out there in Texas either. Texas likes to cook. They do have some hot summers. And speaking of summers, I think we're going to be back into the 110 degree range here in Northern California come very soon. I think today we're supposed to have about 100 degrees or so. 106 up in Redding, 100 in Chico. It's only going to get hotter as we go on through the weekend and the remainder of the weekend and early next week. Got some temperatures rolling in here in the 107 degree range, and on Tuesday or Monday, looks like maybe a little bit cooler here. Kind of a little bit of a south breeze kicking up. Yeah, this is on Tuesday. That does not look inviting. 113 there in Willows, 111 in Chico, 111 up in Anderson. That's some pretty hot temperatures again. August can be a very hot month for us out here in Northern California. Whoa. This is, was that right? This is Wednesday. That looks even hotter. 116? Here we go again. It just never ends. I'm ready for winter time. Yeah, it's going to be hot. So it looks like this weekend, early next week, pretty hot. Next weekend, I don't know about next weekend. Looks like low 90s. So if we get through the week here of 110 degrees, 115, we should be okay. I can handle 95. Looks like a little bit cooler temperatures out here for the entire West Coast area, which is good. In Texas is just Texas. It likes to cook. Don't get me wrong, I love Texas. I absolutely love Texas and the people, the food, and the weather. Sometimes when they get some storms down there, it's actually pretty neat. All right, so far as hurricanes go here, just want to look at the Gulf of Mexico again, see what we have stirring up down there. Now, remember last night, my update, someone was mentioned. Oh, geez, look at that over here. You guys see that? Look at this hurricane. Now, that would be an interesting event. I may have to drive down there to Southern California if that takes place. We got a strong hurricane off the coast here of Mexico that wants to find its way north into Southern California. Now, that looks like it could remain a good tropical storm as it hits Southern California. This is around the 22nd time period, 21st, 22nd. Now, last night, the weather model didn't really quite show it going up this north. That is all dependent on the pressures out here across the map. If we got high pressure out here, it could stir it further out into the Pacific. If there's a low pressure out here along the West Coast, obviously that could steer it further up into California. So that's a very interesting scenario. Rare. We don't see too many tropical storms come up into California like that. There's another one like right behind it. But we'll have to watch that. And far as that hurricane that goes out in the Gulf, that's not there anymore. Looks like that's disappeared. But again, this weather model is about 10 days out. So we'll check this in the coming days. If it stays consistent like this, then I may have to make the trip down there to Southern Cal. I would love to experience that down there. Quite a few flash flooding events and some wind. I think that'd be an awesome trip. So I will watch that and mark my calendar if that does take place. All right, folks. I think that's about it. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend out there. I'm going to try and get some yard work done. Looks like they reported that earthquake there. See, it is above the 2.5 threshold. That's why. So it went out as a preliminary earthquake, automatic status. I've said it many times here. USGS does not report the smaller ones, but if they go above 2. There's a 2.7. You guys see that? 2.7 earthquake. That's a little bit bigger than the other smaller ones here that kicked off here in the beginning of this update video I was talking about. So 2.7 coming in to, well, they have it south of Yellowstone Lake out here, 6.3 kilometers deep. Picked it up very nicely here at Lake Yellowstone, which is further up north a little bit. So we'll watch that, see if we got a swarm kicking up or just a couple smaller earthquakes. Remember, we did see some smaller earthquake activity here around the Yellowstone Lake here just prior to this 2.7. So I'll just kind of watch that, see if it turns into any swarm. There is the image of the first smaller earthquakes. Now this is behind a few minutes, so this isn't live. This is just a recorded data. But on the live data, obviously 2.7 right here. Some smaller quake activity prior to that. And we'll just watch it and see if this turns into any type. Well, there's another earthquake right here coming into the Yellowstone area. So might be seeing a start of a swarm. Now this is not thunderstorm activity. There's a big difference between seeing wind events, thunderstorm activity, compared to earthquake activity. I'll bring up the map here real quick once again, the radar, and confirm that. But I know an earthquake signature when I see it. That's for sure. Rain accumulation. No. Go back. Satellite. Weather radar. As you can see, things are clear as a bell out here. Nothing brewing up. No thunderstorm activity whatsoever. So the seismograph stations look calm, aside from the earthquake activity that's occurring here. You know, we don't see that drawn out blue line. It looks like a cluster of earthquakes or a cluster of magma movement below the surface. That's just not, you know, that's weather. That's thunderstorm activity when it does that type of outside interference. But this is indeed earthquake activity, so I'll be watching that. Here's a little bit better view of it. Looks like it kicked off here about the same time an earthquake there in Indonesia is kicking off. So, all right. Either way, we'll catch you guys back here a little bit later tonight. I'll keep an eye on it. Of course, the live stream will always have that data on here 24/7. Like to keep Yellowstone up there as well because it's obviously a super volcano and does have some pretty interesting earthquake swarms at times. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later tonight, folks, unless something major happens. Enjoy your Saturday. Take care.